13. Book of John, chapter number 13. This is going to be the last message in the series of messages I've entitled A Grace-Filled Life. We've been looking at what it means to live out a life full of God's grace, where we're actually experiencing all the things that we talk and sing about and all of that. And so this is going to be the last message, and I want to focus in on this. And it goes right along with kind of what the music, the testimonies, and even the Sunday school lesson went along with this. And that is a grace-filled life, when it's lived out properly, becomes a living example. A living example of what it means to be a Christ follower. And that's what I trust my life is like. That's what I trust your life is like. And that's what we're going to look at today. A living example. And we're going to start by just reading the entire passage again. And I'm doing that on purpose, just so that we get really familiar with it. But we will be keying in on today on verse number 15. So let's start clear back, chapter 13, verse number 1. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. So Christ is facing this death on the cross. This is what we commonly call the prerequisite, if you will, to the Last Supper. He knows he's going to die, but God's in control. God's always in control, by the way. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. And that's the devil's goal for every one of us. He wants to inspire us to betray our Christ. He wants us to turn our back on our faith. He wants us to give up on a God. That's what he wants to do. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power. Once again, God's in control. And he had come from God and was returning to God. The worst thing the world can do is kill you. Well, what does that do? Gets you into the presence of God, right? So we really have no reason to fear. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. And we talked about what a radical thing that was. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize what I am doing, but later you will understand." That's a great line for all of us, by the way. A lot of stuff happens in life we don't understand, but later we will. "No," Peter said, "you shall never wash my feet." He was refusing to receive grace. And that was our first message. We have to live out this life of grace. You have got to receive grace. You've got to allow Jesus to wash your feet. And how important that was throughout the week to let Jesus wash your feet. You're here this morning. Jesus is washing your feet. He's administering grace to you. You need to be in the Word this week so Jesus can wash your feet and minister His grace to you. You need to be in prayer. Talk to God during the week. You need to fill your mind with good things instead of a lot of the junk of the world. Fill your mind with good things. All that's letting Jesus wash your feet. Peter let Jesus wash his feet, or initially refused, of course. Then Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part of me." Then Lord, Simon Peter replied, "Not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." And Jesus answered, "Those who have a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean." In other words, an application for us, because we need Jesus to keep washing our feet doesn't mean we're just horrible, rotten sinners. No, we're redeemed. We're washed in the blood of the Lamb. But we need to allow Jesus to continue to pour grace into our life. That's so important. "And you are clean, though not every one of you, for he knew who was going to betray him. And that is why he said not everyone was clean." When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightfully so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet," this is what we looked at last week, "you also should wash one another's feet." Not talking about foot hygiene here, but you've been ministered grace to, And in the grace-filled life, as I am receiving grace, I then am able to give grace. I've been forgiven. I now have the capacity to forgive those who hurt me. I am provided for by grace. I now have the ability to meet the needs of others. You see, what I receive, I am to give. That's now the principle of the grace-filled life. And then this is what we're keying on today. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor his messenger greater than the one who sent him. And then I love line 17. Now that you know these things, notice he doesn't say you will be blessed, but you will be blessed if you do them. So we're going to talk about being a living example. Jesus was an example. And when we begin to live out this grace-filled life, he sets the example for us to follow. And as we start living out this grace-filled life of receiving grace, giving grace, receiving grace, giving grace, then our lives become an example of what grace is all about. That's what I want to look at today. You know, we've all heard the saying, do as I do, not as I say. You ever hear that? It's kind of like the parent screaming at their children in a moment of frustration. Stop yelling! Do as I say, not as I do. And sometimes the advice is warranted. You know, sometimes that is good advice. Maybe you've done something and you realize, boy, I don't want my kids or I don't want people I love to do the same thing I did. So you tell them, don't do as I did. No, do this route. You don't want to do this. And that's warranted. But usually, when we give the advice, do as I say, not as I do, this advice is unheeded and ineffective. Because the truth be told, and this is just reality, what you do speaks far louder than what you say. That's just reality. I referenced this Southern Gospel song before, but I just love it. If you listen to it, it's kind of a funny, tongue-in-cheek type song. The way it's sung is kind of sung in a humorous way, but it makes such great points. And one of the lines in it says like this: your walk talks, and your talk talks, but your walk talks louder than your talk talks. And there's so much truth in that. And then I love the next line, which isn't part of this message, but I'll go ahead and give it. Your behavior toward your neighbor is really how you feel about your Savior. Chew on that a while. We're not going there today. But your walk talks louder than your talk talks. Now, you know by now I'm no Albert Einstein, but I can quote him, which makes me appear smart. So here's Albert Einstein. He says, setting an example is not the main means of influencing others. It is the only means. The example we set really speaks volumes. For the Christian, our actions are absolutely paramount. We can't, as Christians, tell people, well, do as I say, not as I do. That doesn't work. The loudest sermon we will ever preach is through our actions. The greatest witness we'll ever have is through our actions. Our actions are more powerful than any song we sing. It's more powerful than any verse we quote or any verse we post on Facebook. It's more powerful than any doctrine we say we stand by. And it is this concept of living by example that I want to look at in our final message of the grace-filled life. Jesus set the example by washing his disciples' feet, and when we follow that example, living out the grace-filled life, we become proper examples to others. And I just want to talk about two things in this. First of all, the need for examples. Why do people need it? Why can't we just tell them? Why do they need to see it? And I would say that's just the way we're built. You see, examples put flesh and blood on concepts for understanding. You know, I love YouTube. YouTube can be a great tool. I know there's, like any social media, any platform, there's the good in it, there's the bad in it. Avoid the bad, get out of it the good. There's a lot of good on YouTube. And one of the things I love about YouTube is that you instantly become an expert in how to fix something. Do you remember in times past those old cumbersome books of encyclopedias of how to fix things? Usually it was a Time Life book or something along that line. And you would get this whole volume of 20, 30 books of how to plumb, how to do carpentry work, how to do this, how to do that. Well, I don't see too many of those being sold anymore because you can literally get on YouTube and type in how to in just about anything and find videos that will show you step by step how to do it. I remember in Lipstick we had bought a new projector, it wasn't super expensive, $700 projector, and after about a year we noticed little white dots begin appearing on the screen. We thought it might be dust on the lens. Of course, it was hung up real high like these, so we didn't do anything for a while, but it kept getting worse and worse. So finally, we got a big old ladder up there, wiped the lens off, and they were still there. So I Googled the symptoms. What causes white dots to appear on a projection screen, and I found out that there was a part very deep within the projector that I did a little research for about 9 months. We just got a whole bunch of bad parts from wherever they came from. And they got in all these projectors. Of course, projectors pass warranty now, as that's always the case. so we could go out and buy a new projector, but Lipstick wasn't exactly swimming in funds. Or I could buy the replacement part, which they said, at least online, which you can believe everything you read, that the new ones you're getting aren't like that. They fix the problem. So I spent about $100 and got a new part. I do not tear electronics apart. I know nothing about it. But I got on YouTube. I actually found a video with the exact model of our projector we had there. Step-by-step instructions, which I needed because this thing was buried in there. And told you what to take apart and how to get to it and what to be careful of touching and not touching and all that kind of stuff. And lo and behold, I put that piece in, step by step, put it all back together, and it worked. It worked. I couldn't believe it. I became a screen projector repairman. At least YouTube helped me do that. And my point is, it would have been a lot harder to have done that if I was just kind of reading about it, in paragraph form. It was a lot easier to see someone actually do it. See, examples put flesh and blood on concepts for understanding. Jesus, that's why one of the reasons the Word became flesh. You remember John? Gospel of John? The Word became flesh. Think about that. The Word of God. Before Christ came, God, you could say, was a concept. God was, He's holy, He's righteous, He's jealous. All these different concepts we read about in the Old Testament. But what Jesus did is He took that Word of God and He became flesh and blood. And so they didn't just have to read about how God was love. They could see that love exemplified through the life of Jesus, and we can too. See, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld, we saw His glory. The glory of the only begotten of the Father. See, that's one of the main benefits of Christ coming, besides, of course, Him dying on the cross, is the Word became flesh. That's what examples do. They put flesh and blood on concepts for understanding. And let's apply this to us. God wants the Word to become flesh in us. Now, we're never going to be Jesus, of course. I'm not saying run around and you're little Christ. But that concept, God wants people to hear about the grace of God and the love of God, the salvation of God. But what they need to see it is in flesh and blood form. They need to see it at work in your life. They need to be able to look at our lives and say, oh, that's what salvation looks like. That's what a Christian really is. They need to be able to look at your life and say, oh, I've heard about God's love, but oh, that's what love looks like. That's love in action. That's what serving others looks like. That's what a soul set free is like. That's what it means to have real peace. That's what it means to be able to trust God when everything's falling apart. You see, all these concepts they hear about and sing about and maybe know about in their mind, they need to see it in flesh and blood form through you and through me. That's what a life of destiny and purpose is all about. Look at him, look at her. Not that we're perfect, and please understand, we swing the pendulum always to the extreme. We either have to be absolutely perfect, or we're just horrible, rotten people who aren't changed at all by grace. No, it's not either extreme. And we're not talking about you have to be perfect to be an authentic Christian. But people got to see that something's at work in your life that's real, that is changing, that you can lean on in the darkest of times. They see, and that dynamic happens not through you trying harder, but through you letting Jesus wash your feet, receiving grace, and then you giving that grace. And as that happens, you become the example of a grace-filled life to the world around you. You see, we can witness and preach and share all day long, and that's important. Your talk is important. The Bible tells us very clearly we need to be ready to be able to give a reason for the hope that lies within us. Very important. But it can't stop there. The real illumination of what it means to be a Christian is our life, our example. I mean, what Jesus did in John chapter 13. He could have just told his disciples, you need to make sure to minister to each other. And by the way, you need to minister to people even that are getting ready to betray you, or people that are getting ready to fail you, or people... No, you need to minister to people like that. He could have said that, and he probably did. I'm sure he did throughout his earthly ministry. But what was really impactful is when they saw him do it. See, we give real illumination to what it means to be a Christian. And as we receive grace and give grace, our life becomes an example of what grace is all about. So examples put flesh and blood on concepts. And then this goes right along with it. Examples demonstrate to the world, and they need to know this, that all this stuff is real. It really works. A life can be redeemed, can be changed. God can set free. God can give you peace. And they need to be able to see that everything we talk about is real. I've talked about this before, but as a kid, I did a lot of make-believe. You ever play make-believe? I did a lot as a kid. I didn't have a whole lot of toys, so we used our imaginations quite a bit. Used to play, I don't know how politically correct this is anymore, but we used to play cops and robbers. You're the bad guy, I'm the good guy, vice versa. And we spent all afternoon hiding and bang, bang, I got you, no you didn't, and all that kind of stuff. When I got a little bit older, we got a Johnny Bench batter-up. And I think I got a picture of that. Not a very good picture, but you get the idea. I'm not making it up. What this is a baseball that's attached to a pole, that attached to another pole that was cemented to the ground, and it had a rubber band, and you would wind that thing around and let it go, and then like this, and then you with the bat would try and time and hit the ball. And then, of course, if you hit it well, it'd wind back up and then go again. If you hit a little off, it'd start doing this, which helped helped you with curveballs and things like that as a training tool for batters. And I love that thing. I used to sit there for hours and just play with that, pretending like I was a Cincinnati Reds, back when the Cincinnati Reds were worth pretending to be like. Those of you who are older know what I'm talking about. Big red machine. Pete Rose, I'd crouch like he did when it's his turn. Joe Morton with the arm flap and all that stuff. And I'd go through different batting stances and just spend all afternoon with that thing. And I loved it. Make-believe. Of course, I wasn't a member of the Reds, but it was make-believe. And I've mentioned this before. I've even played church when I was a kid. Got those stuffed animals saved every Sunday. Line them up. Poor Gary Mouse. He never could stay in salvation. He had to go to the altar every week. But it was all make-believe. It was all said and done. And I had quite an imagination. I could really get into character. Get lost in it. But when it was all said and done, it was make-believe. It wasn't real. And sometimes, as Christians, as a church, and just talking in general, the Church of Jesus Christ, we can come across like just all this stuff is just make-believe. Make-believe. You come, you have a good time, you sing songs, you kind of pump each other up and talk about God, but now you're out in the real world. This stuff doesn't work in the real world. In the real world, you stay awake all night worrying. In the real world, there's no transformation taking place. In the real world, you got to struggle and fight for everything. In the real world, you can't love your neighbor. No, you got to watch out for yourself in the real world. And so we come here and play make-believe and then go out there into the real world. And if we're not careful, we can portray our beliefs like that. Christians talk about salvation, but live like the world. Christians talk about love, but are just as full of prejudices and selfishness as others. Christians talk about power in the blood, but live out weak, anemic lives. They talk about the joy of the Lord with a scowl on their face. But when we learn how to live these grace-filled lives, all of a sudden, our life becomes an example of what really is authentic, genuine, real Christianity. Once again, I'm not telling you to go out and try harder. That won't work. You'll fall flat on your face. You need to be letting Jesus wash your feet. Be in the Word. Fill your mind up with the things of God. Be in prayer throughout the week. Be in church whenever you can. Just let Jesus keep administering grace to you, and then make sure you're giving grace to others. And as you live out that dynamic, your life becomes an authentic, real representation of being a Christian. That's how it works. The grace-filled life. Receiving grace and giving grace. And in the process, becoming a living example others can follow. Let me just tell you, none of us are living this out perfectly, myself included. But my prayer for me and for you is, let's live this out more and more as we go on. You look at the disciples' lives. They didn't leave this place and live out perfect Christian lives from here on out. No, they struggled with some things I don't have time to get into, but you read the book of Acts, you see how the church is trying to mature. You see the prejudices that come up. Even in Peter, God had to whack him over the head 2 or 3 times before he finally got the idea that Gentiles are included in this thing. Over and over, but we're growing it. And how are we doing that? Not by no, but by letting Jesus wash our feet and us washing other people's feet. We grow, we mature in this, and become more and more of an example of what it means to be a Christ follower. Let me end with this illustration. And Dad, you can come to the piano while I tell this. Just play whatever you'd like. One time there was a father and a son. The father was an expert tracker, trailsman, walked trails all the time. He was teaching his son, And while they were out, there was a sudden snowstorm that came up. One of those things that happened in the mountains. Before they knew it, there was 5-6 inches of snow on the ground. The walk was treacherous. And the father knew that if his son misstepped, it could go bad for him. And so he gave his son these specific instructions. Wherever you see my footprint, you walk. Don't walk anywhere else. Wherever you see my footprint, you put your foot. And doing that, they made it home safely. Well, the question I have for myself, would I be comfortable telling someone else, follow me as I follow Christ? That's what Paul said. Wherever you see my footprint, feel free to put yours there. Would you be comfortable saying that? It starts with receiving grace. And I don't know where you're at in all the things we talked about today. Maybe that's where you need to start. Maybe you haven't allowed Jesus to wash your feet. Going back to the first message, maybe you just need to commit to the Lord. Oh, this week, Father, I'm going to make time for you. I'm going to read the Bible with an open heart. I'm going to talk to you during the day. I'm going to turn off this and turn on that and fill my mind with the things of God. I'm just going to let you wash my feet. Maybe that's where you need to start. Maybe you need to start with, whose feet are you going to wash this week? We've all sat here in this wonderful service and received grace. Who are we going to minister to when we leave? Whose feet are we going to wash? And as we do that, as I said several times, we become examples and help people around us know that this is what a Christian really is, and that this Jesus stuff is real. So I just want to end this series by praying for all of us. If you could all stand.